Hi there, I'm going to share with you all today a little bit about my old 1973 Triumph Spitfire Mark IV. I actually sold her in June last year, but before I did I took part in a virtual car show while in the first lockdown, so I'm able to give you a little tour around her and tell you a little bit about the time that we had with her. I'd always liked Triumph Spitfires, but the reason I finally ended up with one was mainly down to the fact that my boyfriend Tom had owned his GT6 for a little while, and I decided that I'd also like a Triumph of my own. I wasn't actively looking to buy a Spitfire at the time, but I think Tom just sent me a link to one day, having spotted one on his daily eBay car browsing. Although I was initially unsure about the bright magenta paintwork, we arranged to go and view it and would decide in person. But, of course, me being me, when we got there, of course, I wanted it. A lot of work was still needed, and in fact the eBay advert pictures showed her up on axle stands and missing her wheels, so she was very much a project, but we knew there was nothing that Tom couldn't do to get her back on the road. You may notice a slight bulge in the bonnet. Well, this was needed because she had been fitted with a Ford 1300 crossflow engine, and the bulge was to accommodate the twin Triumph carburetors that had been grafted onto the Ford inlet manifold. We're not sure why this engine swap had been done, but there were lots of bits on the car that just weren't original, which meant she'd probably be a little harder to work on, as we didn't have too much information on the engine and setup. She also had lots of fiberglass panels on her, including the bonnet, boot and rear wings. So we brought her home and parked her up. Because of various other projects Tom was working on at the time, I knew it would be a little while before we'd be able to make a start on Penny, as I'd named her short for Lady Penelope because of the magenta paint. So I bought her in February 2019, expecting it to potentially be near the end of the summer before she would see the road. Anyway, jump forward a month to March, and it was my birthday. We had a meal booked that evening, and we were just getting ready to go out when Tom said he'd get the car out ready. I think we'd discussed going in the GT6, so I was really surprised and confused when I walked out to find my Spitfire parked up instead. As it turned out, as well as working non-stop on my Wolseley during the weekdays, as we were in the midst of her restoration at the time, and we had the deadline to complete her just a few days after my birthday actually, in time for the Practical Classics restoration show, but somehow amongst all this Tom had also found time to work on Penny too. He'd had to completely go through all the brakes, suspension and loads of other bits, plus buying and fitting new tyres to go onto my new Spitfire wheels, which I got courtesy of Tom's dad Dave, to replace the Dolomite wheels that she came with. So she was finally roadworthy. And after my birthday meal, I was desperate to get back out to the car park to see her, as I just couldn't believe it. I think we then spent all evenings just driving, nowhere in particular, just to enjoy driving the car, which was amazing. So, although she was now roadworthy, she was by no means finished. There were lots of other little niggles, and as you can see from the video, the interior especially needed lots of work. The seats were torn, and because the roof leaked, I had to remove all the carpet to let it dry out. Plus there were lots of cables hanging down from under the dash. The wiring was just in such a mess. So for a while we drove her around locally, with mostly just the odd trip to the shops for me, but I was a bit reluctant to take her any further as I wasn't overly confident driving her, and I often struggled to get her in gear. Tom did tell me this was just a Triumph thing and that his GT6 was the same. I just needed to be more forceful apparently, but I still struggled. Gradually though, another issue popped up, as the clutch had started to slip. Again, it was fine for local journeys, but not really any further, so we put off fixing this again because other projects took priority, but eventually Tom was able to sort it last summer. There was quite a lot of work involved, with the whole engine having to come out, but eventually it was changed and she was fixed, so no more slipping clutch. Now that the clutch was sorted, Tom told me to take her around the block and just see how I got on. I've already mentioned I was often reluctant to drive her, and unfortunately, even knowing she was now fixed, I still wasn't keen and came back from my test drive questioning whether it was time to sell her. As much as Tom enjoyed driving her and I enjoyed being driven in her, we agreed it was probably time to put her up for sale and give her the opportunity to be enjoyed by someone new. I must admit, I also often wished Penny was in slightly better condition, as although she was fairly presentable overall, there were just a few marks in the paint which bothered me, and she really needed a new full interior, but given that she wasn't really getting the use from me, it seemed silly throwing lots of money at the car for things that weren't essential. In the meantime, I was on the lookout for a Hillman Minx convertible to replace her with, and I managed to find one quicker than expected, so it was finally time for Penny to go up for sale. She wasn't actually on the market long before she was sold to someone locally, and I've since been told that she's moved on again to someone new, so maybe I'll get to see her around in the future. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe to see more.